we are committed to recapturing the flag of the conservative movement and providing a forum to figure out what comes next.
Men cannot improve a society by setting fire to it. They must seek out the old virtues and bring them back into the light.
The American conservative was first on all the major issues that were part of the 2016 election.
All right, well, thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening. My name is Emile Doak. I am the Executive Director of the American Conservative. And on behalf of our staff and board of directors, I'm thrilled to welcome all of you back to our annual gala after a one-year hiatus. It truly is great to be getting back to normal here in Washington. We're here tonight in gratitude to the benefactors, contributors, and many more who have supported the American Conservative over our nearly 2 decades of existence. And we're also here to build a movement with the ideas, people, and institutions who are here tonight to advance a Main Street conservatism. Now, of course, that begs the question of what is Main Street conservatism? Connecticut Avenue out front is hardly Main Street, of course. The Mayflower isn't exactly the local Elks Lodge, although it is very nice. Which could obviously beg the question of what exactly we're doing here. But to answer that question, I want to go back to one of my very first weeks at the American Conservative, almost 4 years ago, and one of our first editorial meetings with then editor Bob Mary, who's here tonight. And this was in early 2017, soon after the political earthquake that was the Donald Trump election. And Bob remarked that he felt that the division driving our politics might not be so much left versus right, but rather nationalism versus globalism. That might be the driving division in our politics today. Or perhaps I can put that another way. It's those who derive their political identity and their political compass through achievement and identification with an ever-emerging international global order, versus those who instead identify with a particular place and a particular history. So I find that Main Street conservatism, like any worthwhile conservatism, is a disposition. It's one that has a preference for the local and the concrete over the distant and abstract. And it's that disposition and that preference that guides our work every day at the American Conservative. Now, this isn't necessarily a pure populism. Again, we are at the Mayflower, after all. But we are certainly sympathetic to the populist discontent that's roiled politics throughout the West. Rather, we need a better sense of solidarity between the classes within our polity so that those at the top are representing the interests of the populist discontent below. So that, to me, is Main Street conservatism. It's a preference for the local and concrete, as I said before, over that distant and abstract. But how does this disposition manifest itself in our politics? As many here may know, I quote our founding editorial probably too much. It's now emblazoned on the wall at our office at the American Conservative. But I do that because I firmly believe that when future generations look back at this moment, that founding editorial written by our first editor, Scott McConnell, who's also here tonight, will be seen as a stake-in-the-ground moment for the conservative movement. That first editorial reads that our magazine's mission is broad. It is to reignite the conversations that conservatives should have engaged in since the end of the Cold War, but did not. Which, of course, again begs the question, what are those conversations? Well, I think a great answer to that question comes from an interview that we did on our podcast, TAC Right Now, which you should all subscribe to and rate 5 stars on all the podcast platforms. It was an interview last summer with a certain Jeff Sessions, who's also here tonight, and from whom you'll hear later. Yes. And Senator Sessions on that TAC Right Now podcast said that we cannot continue, as President Trump has warned us, getting involved in endless wars all over the globe, thinking that we can just remake humanity. That's not conservatism. Conservatism is a cast of mind. You need to be sure that this theory is going to work. Senator Sessions then continued, family, traditions, culture, those kinds of things have got to be defended. And this ideological view that we're not a nation, we're an idea, somehow our Constitution is supposed to apply worldwide, that's ridiculous. I agree. So our founding editors endeavored to host conversations on issues back in 2002 that made us a very lonely voice at that time. We were a lonely conservative voice against the Iraq War, and our mission, yes, thank you. And our broader mission on a whole host of issues made us a lonely voice. Fortunately, now we are not nearly so alone. The ideas that have animated this organization for nearly 20 years are now the same ones that are driving our politics. And for this, I just look at 4 simple issues. As I mentioned before, our foreign policy for too long has been marked by a hubris that has led to disastrous crusades to export democracy around the world and nation build in our image. We need only to look at the unraveling in Afghanistan in recent months to see evidence of this. And I don't mean the withdrawal, which was right, but the way that we have wasted millions and millions of dollars over the last 20 years on that failed nation-building experiment. Our economic paradigm has been driven by a consumerism that underlies reckless lending and over-financialization, leaving local communities hollowed out and beholden to global conglomerates. Our immigration policy has disregarded any consideration of the social and cultural cohesion of the communities that are already here. And in the social realm, a narrative of ever-increasing license has accelerated the poison of identity politics and decimated the family. So TAC's moment has come, and we are committed to recapturing the flag of the conservative movement and providing a forum to figure out what comes next. After all, that is the purpose of a magazine in the truest sense. Conservatism has always been hashed out in the pages of magazines. One need only to look at National Review and the fusionism that it forged in the early days of the conservative movement through commentary and its push for neoconservatism and the Weekly Standard in the Bush era and all of the havoc that had wreaked. So how are we doing on that mission? This past year, we've made strategic additions to our masthead. Micah Meadowcroft has joined us as our managing editor. We have a host of new regular contributors. Yes. We have a host of new regular contributors, many of whom are here with us tonight, including Sohrab Ahmari, Doug McGregor, Matthew Schmitz, and Matthew Walter. We are investing heavily in our digital presence, and we will be unveiling a rebuilt website in early 2022. Journalism will always be our core program, but there are many more ways that we can pursue our mission. We've expanded our programs under the lead of Sean Riley. We've held conferences on cronyism, urbanism and architecture, and our Constitutional Fellows program, which seeks to educate young professionals here in town in the principles of the Constitution and the American way of life, is now in its 4th semester, and many of our Constitutional Fellows are also here with us this evening. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 podcasts, TAC Right Now, Empire Has No Clothes, which is hosted by our own Kurt Mills and Will Ruger on foreign policy issues, and The General Eclectic by Rod Dreher, over here at our table to my left, on faith and culture issues. So I want to invite all of you here tonight to be part of this movement to advance Main Street conservatism, whether that's by writing for us, by contributing financially, or just by sharing our content with friends and family across all of your platforms and networks. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm humbled and honored to be leading this special organization at this current moment. I want to thank especially our Chairman's Circle sponsors tonight, George O'Neill and William Benter. Our gold, thank you. Our gold sponsors this evening, Tom Pauken, Howard and Roberta Amundsen, the Conservative Partnership Institute, and Don Sebastiani, who has provided the delicious wine that you have here tonight. And lastly, I want to send a special thanks to Hillsdale College's DC Graduate School of Government for sponsoring our wonderful reception that we just left. Please do check out all of their programs. I believe that the application deadline is coming up. It's a fantastic program here in DC for young professionals.